Thanks for tuning in to Ag PhD. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. We really appreciate you watching today because it's really critical at this time of year that we get things done on the farm before harvest really gets rolling. And if you've got pasture management to get taken care of, come on, you're not going to stop the combine to go manage weeds out in the pasture. We'll talk about what you need to do today.
We'll also discuss soil testing. Probably the most popular question we get about soil testing each year is, should I use grids or should I use zones? And along with that, what size should my grids and zones be? We're going to talk about all that today.
We've got a weed of the week that is not all that bad a plant as long as it grows where we want it to, but if it gets out in the wrong spots, we've got to get it under control. We'll show you how to do that on your farm today, but first, here's our farm basics.
Stop losing money from your stored grain with the EndZone fan control system from Farm Shop MFG. The EndZone monitors outside conditions to run your fans so your grain naturally reaches ideal temperature and humidity. For more information, visit farmshopmfg.com.
During our Farm Basics time today, we're going to talk about yield monitors and yield maps, and we especially want to speak to non-farmers out there. This is a tremendous tool, the whole yield monitor thing, that farmers never used to have. When Darren and I were growing up on the farm, or even as young agronomists, we did not have this. I can't even imagine farming without this today, so we want to explain exactly what it is and what the benefits are for us as farmers.
Growing up on the farm, I thought the greatest invention ever was an air-conditioned enclosed cab on a tractor. That was nice for me because it was more comfortable to be out in the field. But the yield monitor is by far the most valuable invention that's happened in farming because we could see the variance out in fields. It was a game changer for us because now as that combine drives through the field, you just constantly get updates on, oh, my yield's 200 bushel corn right now. Oh, now my yield's only 140 bushel. I can flag that spot in my field and say, okay, what's going on out here? What happened? Why did I lose yield in that spot? And by the same token, I can find that spot that goes 280 bushel corn and say, wow, everything's right over here. What's different? Because here's the thing, as farmers, many times if we have a disappointing yield out in a field, it's easy to say, well, you know, if we would have caught one more rain, that would have made all the difference in the world. Well, guess what? That field got the same rain. But one area went 280 bushel and one went 140 bushel. The yield monitor lets us find where those areas are out in the field, and now we can start improving them for the future.
Once you have all that information from the field, then you can print that off on a yield map. What we have then is different colors, and you can certainly set the parameters for that too. So for example, a lot of times the standard map will have 5 colors or 7. What I typically do is have it set to 12 different colors, so I have 12 different ranges of yield, and I might even have 20 or 30. I just want to see as much as I can what made a difference in the field. Now we use this to evaluate everything, to evaluate fungicides, herbicides, insecticides, fertility, seed varieties, almost anything that we can do out in the field. Now this gives us a great way to measure it.
The other thing that's really interesting about this, Brian, is you can see patterns on those maps. Like you mentioned, we'll use different colors to show different ranges of yield. Okay, here's the 260 to 280 bushel yield, here's the 240 to 260 bushel yield, and so on. And when we see those patterns out in the field, we can start evaluating our farming practices. Maybe it was nothing that we did this year, but we're seeing problems from last year show up. Oh, I didn't get my residue spread evenly, or oh, I didn't spread the fertilizer quite evenly last year, and now it's showing up on this year's yield map. That's pretty impactful on farms, just knowing that every time we go out in the field, we're making a big difference.
Unfortunately, one of the things that shows up on yield maps and yield monitors far too often is when we as farmers don't do a good job with weed control. If you've got this week's weed, we'll show you how to stop it on your farm later in the show.
As a global planter consultant, YieldTrack caught my eye because it was agronomically superior to anything else that I had seen. Things like the potential of increasing corn yields approximately 12 bushel per acre by eliminating the center section compaction and pinch rows that have compaction on both sides of the same row. Improving uniform seed depth and plant emergence by cutting wing movement 50% using walking wing wheels which stabilize row unit movement at higher speeds. floating bigger seed and fertilizer payloads at a 14 psi or less footprint through innovative design that eliminates weight and improves durability, allowing YieldTrack to be up to 6,000 pounds lighter than other equivalent machines. Contact Norwood Sales to learn more on how to improve your farm's profitability using a YieldTrack planter.
Downtime during spraying can lead to huge yield losses. Keep rolling with the Pentair Hypro Force Field. This pump features a unique self-regulated chamber that allows the pump to run dry while eliminating cracked seals, so you can spray longer and more reliably. Learn more at pentair.com/hypro.
How much money are you leaving in the bin? If you want the most profit from your stored grain, you need the Grain Temp Guard from Farm Shop MFG. This low-cost bin monitoring solution tracks temperature and humidity and gets your grain in ideal condition. And with deep preseason discounts on all Grain Temp Guard units, now is the best time to upgrade. Don't leave your money out in the bin. Get the most from your grain. Order today at farmshopmfg.com.
Success isn't just about maintaining your operation, how you make out for the season, or how much you can get from each acre. It's about doing precisely what needs to be done to feed your crop and grow your legacy, all the way down to the last drop. AgroLiquid Precision Crop Nutrition. Apply less, expect more. Find a retailer at agroliquid.com.
Pentair Hypro 3D nozzles are your premier choice for fungicide applications. Syngenta fungicide application field trials have shown Hypro 3D nozzles provide a yield advantage of up to 10% over other nozzles, maximizing the return on your fungicide investment. Learn more at pentair.com/hypro.
Today we're going to talk a little about soil testing, especially with regards to grid versus zone testing, and also what size of grid or zone should you use.
We do get questions about this all the time, especially on Ag PhD Radio. People will say, well, which is the best way for me to do this? The best way is the way that you can manage. So let's say that you've got variable rate application technology that you can spread to 1 acre grids, then I'd pull 1 acre grids and see what kind of variance is out in your field. When we look at pH, for example, there is such a difference in some of our fields that from one grid point to the next, we may need some lime, and we don't need some lime, just the next point over. By sampling in smaller grids, we've got the opportunity to try to manage it well.
Here's the thing. The more variance you have, the smaller your grid needs to be. Let's say you've been managing on 5 acre grids for the last 10 years. I don't have any problem with that, but what I would suggest to you is at least once, just go down to 1 acre grids. What you will probably find is now this gives you the opportunity to even things out over the field. And once you even things out, well, now you actually could go back to 2.5 acre grids or maybe even 5 acre grids. That's fine. But it's just that one application, that one time where you have the opportunity to get those things straightened out on your farm. Go to the small grids at least once.
All right, so that's one extreme. Let's look at the other. How about 1 sample per field? Frankly, the data is worthless. You're going to be over applying fertilizer in half the field and under applying fertilizer on the other half because you're applying towards an average, and there's going to be variance out in your field. Now, I'll look at it this way. If your yield monitor data says, I had 100 bushel wheat across my entire field, there was never any variance, well, you might be able to get by with 1 sample for the whole field. But if you saw, oh, I had 60 bushel wheat here and 120 bushel wheat there, or I had 100 bushel corn here and 300 bushel corn there, you've got tremendous variance out there and you need to go to some smaller grids.
All right, now we talk about zones. A lot of people like zones, and I'm fine with zones, that's okay. But here's what I want you to think about. Are your zones accurate? You may say, well, I'm doing different soil types. Okay, I'm not a believer in testing by soil type. And also, I'm not a believer by testing by Veriscart either. This is the reason why. Just think about this. All the things that you're going to measure in that soil test, you got roughly 20 things. You got all the micronutrients, all the secondary nutrients, all the major nutrients. You got soil pH, you got cations change capacity, you got base saturation, you got all these things. If it's a Veriscart, if it's a soil type, and you're using it to say, well, the Veriscart said this area was all the same. Does that mean every single one of those 20 things is the same? Not a chance in the world. So If you want to use zones, fine, but at least once split the zones up into something around 1 acre. So don't take big zones. I hate big zones, just like Darren said with composite sampling. The data is pretty worthless. So at least one time, see what you have for actual variance, then use variable rate fertility to fix not just P and K, but to fix all the things that need to be fixed, because you'll see variance in everything from pH to the micronutrients. We want to try to even out the field as much as possible. Then you can apply one thing across most of the field.
This information that we're giving you works everywhere in every soil on the earth. If you say, well, in my area, they do it a little bit different, that doesn't make it right. That just means, well, we're using the practice we used 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. You can manage things a little more intensely on your farm, and you should see results. Now, in different soil types, like say, for example, you have very sandy, light, beach sand kind of soil, yes, you're going to manage things a little bit differently than you are with very heavy, deep clays. Or if you're in a high moisture area, you may do your fertilizer application a little different than in a low moisture area. But you still need to start with good soil sample data to be able to determine what the best program is to give you the best return on investment on your farm.
One last thing I want to leave you with is how to soil sample. Here's how you soil sample. You pick GPS points, whether it's a grid or a zone, whether it's a big grid or a small grid, a big zone or a small zone, I don't care. You select GPS points, you drive to that GPS point, you get out of your vehicle, whatever the vehicle is, you take 2 or 3 cores on each side of the vehicle, all 4 sides, you throw everything together in a sample bag, done. And the reason why you want to go with GPS points is that's repeatable. So now you can come back next year. You can come back 5 years from now. You can come back 50 years from now. This gives you the opportunity to truly trace how you're doing over a period of time. Don't randomly sample across your zones or your grids. That's never going to work. You're never going to have repeatability. Pick GPS points. That's absolutely 100% the way to go.
Well, one of the things that you may see out in your field while you're out soil sampling is this week's Weed of the Week. Can you identify it?
Find love, and then give it all away. Find love, then give it all away.
Where we have run the Soil Warrior, we have harvested the best corn we have ever harvested in the history of Wrenwood Farms. Now, I'm kind of always wanting to push the envelope to see what else I can do to help enhance that emergence. Their ride is so much smoother. Their seed placement is even better. Where we had our best emergence and we've had our best yields was where we ran the Soil Warrior.
Each year brings new and unique challenges to farming, and your operation needs to constantly adapt to meet them. That's why at Ag Biome, we're working every day to bring you new and better solutions. Microbial-based solutions that protect your crop and help it reach its full potential. To learn more about how we're doing it, visit agbiome.com. Ag Biome, feeding the world responsibly, partnering with microbes for human benefit.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whenever you want. In your life and on your farm, Case IH AFS Connect gives you more control. Monitor your operation, manage your fleet and your farm data your way. Case IH, rethink productivity.
Fall fall pasture management may not be at the top of your priority list now because you might think, well, I got time, I don't have to do that quite yet, but guess what? Harvest is coming up as well, so getting this taken care of now could be really important for your farm.
All right, one of the big questions we get from people is, when's the best time to control weeds out in my pasture? Should I spray in the spring or the fall? And I always say the best time is always today. Whenever the weed is growing, we want to go kill it. So I don't care if it's the spring, it's the summer, it's the fall, it does not matter to me. But the one key thing that I'm going to tell you is spray at least a couple weeks before your first killing frost. If you don't spray early enough, what's going to happen is your herbicide won't truly get down all the way through the extensive root system of many of these perennials or sometimes even biennial weeds, and you don't get a complete kill. So what we're after here today is not just to burn the top growth. We're after complete control on every weed out in that pasture. So hopefully you have a lot more productive pasture next year.
And there are some new tools out there too that you could consider using on your farm. One of those being DuraCore. We talk a lot about Milestone. That's been a really fun product to work with. Aminopyrrolate is the active ingredient. It's the best product we've ever seen on thistles. It's fantastic, and like Brian said, gets down in the roots and kills them. The problem is most pastures don't just have a few thistle plants, they've got a variety of weeds. Using a product like DuraCore has two different active ingredients, one being Milestone for control of things like thistles, but the other is a new component.
Well, the other one is basically a 2,4-D replacement. Let's step back for a second. For years there was Grazon, that was Tordon and 2,4-D. Then Grazon next, Milestone and 2,4-D. With the DuraCore, it's Milestone, and I'll just call it the new 2,4-D replacement. Less drift, a little bit better efficacy. So we would encourage you to at least be checking that out on your farm or on your ranch. The thing with two mode of action products, it's fine if you have a variety of weeds, but I'll be honest, I'm not a huge believer in two mode of action products when I have patches of perennials. So here is what I would encourage you to do. Number one, if thistle is your number one problem on the farm, you just go out there with straight Milestone at 7 ounces. Yes, it's going to cost more than DuraCore or Grazon Next or almost anything else, but who cares? You're after complete control, not just this year, but forever. Forever. And what I mean by that is what happens commonly is you go out to your pasture, you burn the weed down a little bit, and it keeps coming back, same weed, year after year after year, because these thistles are either perennial or biennial. So you've got to get ahead of them, you've got to get complete control. Milestone's the thistle product. Tordon is an excellent product if, let's say, you have leafy spurge or a number of other perennials. If you have brush species, that's where we'd probably have you move over to something like Remedy Ultra, that's triclopyr, or potentially you could go Vassland, that's going to be a little bit lower drift product, similar to Remedy Ultra, like a triclopyr. There's also chaparral, and that's a combination of the active ingredients you'll find in Ally and Milestone. So you've got a number of different products there for perennial weeds, and for longer term control, that's usually what I talk to people about.
Brian, I can't believe it. You haven't even mentioned your favorite pasture product yet.
Well, Distinct is my favorite pasture product, but that, Darren, is for annual weeds, maybe biennial weeds. So the perennials, again, you got to go with something stronger. You got to go with something that's going to cost a little more money, like Milestone or Tordon. That's the way to go there. But the annual weeds, maybe some biennials, I really do love Distinct. It's just Status without the corn safener, and it's 1/3 the price of Status. Now, a lot of people will say 2,4-D or dicamba, that's the way I want to go. But try to find the newer formulations, especially on the 2,4-D. Something like Enlist 1 or Freelex, you don't have all that drift and volatility of the old 2,4-D. I'd just really be thinking about that, because very commonly out of pastures, we see drift and volatility that hurts cropland.
Well, weed control is one big issue, and now is a great time to get that under control on your farm. But the other things that I wanted to focus on are the health of the grass and the fertility of the soil. So when we look at grazing well into the fall, as temperatures begin to decline and we start seeing daytime temperatures down into the 60s or even lower, that's a great time to get some Rise Up Smart Grass out on your pasture. Now, this is gibberellic acid that's going to increase stem elongation and lengthen your grazing window. It's been a game changer for a lot of ranches that are starting to run a little bit short on pasture and want to get the cattle out on pasture longer and have some more grass for them to eat.
In terms of fertility, we would just encourage you soil test out in your pasture. That's a really good way to go. And then look at everything, not just nitrogen, but look at sulfur and boron, potassium, phosphorus. There are a lot of nutrients where you could really help your overall pasture production. We say it very often, but so many pastures around the country and really around the world are neglected. If we just properly fertilize, we use Rise Up Smart Grass, we do some rotational grazing. If you do the right things, it's very common to double your grass production. And while you may not look at grassland as a cash crop, I do, because the more grass you have, the more you're going to overall increase your net income.
The other thing is drought tolerance, Brian. As we feed the grass properly, it uses less water. So we can produce more grass with less rainfall with the proper fertility. So managing weeds, very important in drought situations too, because weeds are very inefficient users of light and of nutrients. If we manage the weeds, we get good grass growth well into the fall with something like Rise Up Smart Grass. And then we also manage that pasture, as you mentioned, with rotational grazing and fertility. We can do a great job out in the pasture, and now is the time to get these things done.
Well, coming back to weeds, we'll talk about our Weed of the Week next.
The Weed of the Week is brought to you by Corteva Agriscience, Agriculture Division of Dow DuPont. Finish the fight against tough weeds with the Enlist Weed Control System.
Weeds are tough, but we're tougher. With unrivaled weed control, reduced drift, and near zero volatility. So, who's tough now?
Weed of the Week is compass plant. Now, you may be of the belief that every plant should live. Now, here at Ag PhD, we want plants to live, and in fact, compass plant is protected in certain areas. We're not saying we have to kill this plant in every single situation, but just understand we also here at Ag PhD encourage you to kill corn and to kill soybeans and to kill wheat when it's in the wrong field. So it's just in certain situations that we feel like we need to control these plants, because when they are in the wrong spot, they are considered weeds.
Well, if you're looking at our Weed of the Week and you say, man, that looks like what I call gumweed or what I call turpentine plant, yes, we're talking about the same thing, compass plant. So out in cultivated fields, you have to look at it as this is a long-lived perennial. It's not one that really spreads a lot, but it is a perennial weed. So the best way to get down into a perennial root system is with Roundup. Many people will say, well, what about tillage? But if you chop those roots up, you could have new plants shooting up. I'd rather not do the tillage, spray the Roundup at a high labeled rate, and then kill that plant completely.
But typically when we're talking about forbs, which this one is, Roundup isn't the best, or if nothing else, at least you have to run with a very strong rate. So make sure if you're using Roundup, you're using the highest labeled rate. Otherwise, there are other things that you could certainly try. Many are not even going to be labeled on compass plant, but I would try something like Distinct or Status, 2,4-D. A lot of different things will likely burn it down for you.
One other product you may try to burn down is Sharpen. That could be used in a variety of crops too.
And certainly Liberty is a good burn down product as well, and it can be used in Liberty Link crops. Well, that's it for our Weed of the Week, compass plant, but stay tuned, Iron Talk is coming up next.
If you want unparalleled performance from your cornhead, you need the Diamant from Capello USA. Fully hydraulic deck plates chop with speed and precision, and chain-free gearboxes make a quieter, more efficient machine. The Diamant's revolutionary quick-release snouts and bonnets prevent damage and make maintenance a breeze. And our folding option allows for clear visibility on roads, making travel between fields safe, quick, and easy. For more ways the Diamant can innovate your corn harvest, contact your Capello dealer today. Capello, wherever you are, we are.
Engineered to be the most advanced concave system available, the XBR system threshes all crops, reduces grain loss, and significantly improves grain quality and storability.
Probably the biggest difference that we noticed right away was the grain quality. The sample was much better. With this XPR system, now we've cut down rotor loss significantly. I can switch out a 2-pound cover plate in just a few minutes and jumped about 30% more on our capacity.
Visit EstisPerformanceConcaves.com.
Stop losing money from your stored grain with the End-Zone fan control system from Farm Shop MFG. Hot spots and moisture in your bin can cost you thousands in lost revenue. The End-Zone monitors outside conditions to run your fans exactly when you want them to, naturally bringing your grain to ideal temperature and humidity. Master bin management with the End-Zone. For more information, visit farmshopmfg.com.
Success isn't just about maintaining your operation, how you make out for the season, or how much you can get from each acre. It's about doing precisely what needs to be done to feed your crop and grow your legacy, all the way down to the last drop. AgroLiquid Precision Crop Nutrition. Apply less, expect more. Find a retailer at agroliquid.com.
How much does your crop residue cost you? Over time, residue accumulates in your fields, building excess carbon levels and tying up your plant available nitrogen. Residue also traps P, K, and micros and can take years to naturally become available to your crops. This is because soil lacks the diverse microbial life needed to break it all down. With Decomp, you can naturally restore life to your soil and allow the release of valuable crop fertility. Learn more about Decomp at eggbio.solutions.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whenever you want. In your life and on your farm, Case IH AFS Connect gives you more control. Monitor your operation, manage your fleet and your farm data your way. Case IH. Rethink productivity.
Getting residue spread evenly behind your combine is so critical to the success of your next crop. We'll discuss this important topic in today's Iron Talk. Everyone is always excited to get soybean and wheat crops off the instant they're ready to harvest. We fall into that category in our farm as well. With corn, though, it may stand in the field just a little bit longer to dry down, and the rush in the northern climates is then to get it harvested before the snow flies. Harvest can often be a rush. However, if you don't get your residue spread evenly, you're setting yourself up for problems with your next crop. Even if the residue is just a little bit thicker in spots, it leads to the ground not warming up as fast and the emergence of your crop being slowed or even stopped. We saw this all across the country in 2019 and 2020. If harvest is already done on your farm, act now to move uneven residue distribution around and minimize problems going forward. Some tillage, hopefully just light tillage, will be required. A heavy harrow has become a popular choice in the north, but anything light like a field finisher could be a good option. The trick is to do as little soil disturbance as possible since these fields will be sitting with no crop for a while. Personally, I'd consider getting some cover crop out there immediately to protect your soils from erosion too. There's plenty of information and data supporting Brassica family cover crops to help speed the breakdown of residue as well. If you haven't begun or finished harvest yet, this is a key time for your farm. No matter what crop you're harvesting, take some time. Make the adjustments necessary to spread your residue evenly across the field. This will eliminate costly and time-consuming additional passes needed to clean things up. It'll also be evident in faster emergence and thicker stands of crop next season. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now, back to the show.
Well, that's our time for today's show, but before we go, we want to invite you to check out the Ag PhD radio show, where we take your live phone calls each weekday on SiriusXM Channel 147 at 2 p.m. Central.
Don't miss the next Ag PhD TV show. We'll have another Weed of the Week, Farm Basics, Iron Talk, and a whole lot more. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.